welcome back to Belong Blog and to another vlog. Today is such a beautiful day in the UK and I'm really enjoying just sitting out in the garden and just relaxing a bit. You might be able to hear some of my chickens in the background and some workmen somewhere doing something, which is less than relaxing, but there you go, never mind, eh? So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today was about that whole idea of relaxing as a parent, and in particular about going on holiday, and about going on holiday without your children. I've just been very fortunate to do exactly that. My wife Gail and I went to Cape Verde Islands last week, and we had a wonderful week together where we literally did nothing. If you haven't been, Cape Verde is just off the west coast of Africa. Absolutely gorgeous beaches, very unspoilt, and completely nothing to do there, which was exactly the kind of holiday that we needed, really. But whilst I was out there, I happened to look on a forum that was talking about the idea of respite in fostering and adoption, and one of the comments that seemed to be repeatedly made was that the view that foster and adoptive parents shouldn't take holidays without kids, that the children should always accompany us on our planned breaks away. And I did a lot of thinking about that, because I certainly think that when we first started fostering, I felt a real guilt about any time that I had away from my children, whether that was for an hour to go and do a Zumba class, or whether that was for longer. I just really felt like I should be available to my kids at all times. And now I often see parents who feel the same. They feel really guilty about just taking some time out for themselves. And so I guess I wanted to send this video as a way of kind of challenging that idea a bit. But rather than focus on the whole area of self-care, which I know I write a lot about, because it's something I'm really, really passionate about, I wanted to focus more on the idea of what is a holiday. My kids have been with me for 10 years now. We're in a very different place, thank goodness. But certainly those first 5 or 6 years were really, really difficult. They were very challenging years, in many different ways. And we did take our children on holiday with us every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. But what I wanted to share with you was the idea of, holidays with traumatised children aren't holidays for parents. They're just not. Taking my kids away was something that I really wanted to do. It was something that I believed a lot in, that idea of travel as a learning experience. And I knew that all 3 of my boys were really suffering at school, really finding school very difficult, and because of that they weren't accessing learning very easily. And so we wanted to take them to places and immerse them in different cultures and give them that chance to learn in a very different way. And it worked. My kids have had the most amazing holidays, but they weren't a holiday for me. I never came back from any of our holidays feeling rested and recharged and ready to go. I came back feeling exhausted, completely and utterly exhausted. Because taking my children away, whether that was within the UK on a week's camping trip, or whether it was the amazing holidays we've had, like 5 weeks travelling around California, the week we spent in Bali, or the 6 weeks that we spent travelling up the coast of Australia, or the 3 weeks that we spent touring around Tuscany and the lakes in Italy. I mean, I'm talking some pretty amazing holidays. And anybody who's seen the photos from those holidays would see lots of pictures of 3 children smiling from ear to ear. But there was a lot of things that went on behind the scenes of those holidays. Things we didn't capture on camera, things that weren't quite so happy. For me, those holidays meant a tremendous amount of effort. My children had a lot of anxiety issues generally in life, and those anxiety issues became even more of a concern when we were taking them to places they hadn't been. So let me give you some examples. The week that we spent in Cyprus, we went on an all-inclusive package deal. It was the first time that we did it with our boys. We figured that that would be probably the easiest way to holiday, to stay in one place and to have everything kind of taken care of. So if we wanted to go out of the resort, we could do, but if things were really difficult, then we could stay at the resort itself and know that all our needs were going to be met. We spent a lot of time communicating with the hotel, talking about our boys, and they were brilliant. They agreed that the children could go to the kids club, even though they were technically too old to do so. And they were really open to learning about the difficulties that our children had. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out as planned. In fact, none of our kids clubs have ever worked out as planned. My children have managed to get themselves excluded from every single kids club, whether in the UK or abroad, or whether on holiday or part of our normal week. They have managed to do things that have led to them having to leave. Not really the fault of my boys, just because the difference between them and their peers was just too huge. So we soon gave up on the idea of going anywhere that had a kids club, which was unfortunate because, of course, the purpose of kids club is not only do the kids get to go off and have an amazing time, but the parents get to relax and have some child-free time as well. That wasn't going to work for us. The other issue that we discovered with an all-inclusive is the abundance of food. Now, your children may be different to mine, but there is definitely a pattern with fostered and adopted kids of having issues around food. The first day that we went to that buffet, my boys had plate after plate of food, and it got to the point where it was like we had to stop them. We had to intervene and say, okay, you can't eat anymore. There'll be plenty of food left here, and available to us every day. We'll be able to come back at lunch, we'll be able to come back at dinner. But basically we're cutting you off now, 2 of the children accepted that. They were a bit unhappy about it, probably feeling a bit ill as well from everything they'd eaten, but they did accept it, and they moved on. Unfortunately, my eldest Hayden was not in a place to do that, and what emerged after that was a boy who at this point was 12 years old, having a full-on temper tantrum in the middle of the restaurant. I mean, wailing, crying, because he was having to leave the buffet, which quickly turned into a lot of anger, which involved me lifting him up and putting him on my side hip, like you would with a very young child, carrying him out of the restaurant whilst he was shouting, "There's not going to be any food left. Look at all of these greedy fuckers. They're going to eat it all." Which clearly gave us a bit of a reputation around the place. And so the whole issue around buffets and all-inclusive, it became something we encountered every single mealtime of that holiday. And was really, really difficult. Difficult for him, but also difficult for us as well to manage that. So that was a bit of fun. Then there was our time in America. Like I said, we travelled throughout California, did San Fran, Yosemite, down to LA, San Diego, and even went over to Las Vegas for a few days as well. Should have been the trip of a lifetime. Unfortunately, it's not so much fun when you're having to deal with shoplifting. You know, shoplifting is something that we have had to manage in the UK with our children for some time. Not anymore, thankfully. But managing it in America is a whole different story. You know, the way that it was handled out there, that kind of very tough approach, you know, completely understandable actually. And often we were encountering police officers and like shop security who were probably saying all the stuff to the kids that we wanted to say, really, but being really quite firm, quite strict about it. And our boys weren't used to dealing with that, and that caused a lot of issues throughout the 5 weeks that we were there as well. Then another issue on holiday is that old old issue of Wi-Fi connection. Wi-Fi is the most amazing thing, but when it comes to traumatised children, I think it can be incredibly difficult. My kids don't do well on the internet. They need a lot of supervision to make good choices around how they manage internet access. Well, in our home, that's something that we can do. But when we're out in a country we don't know, in hotels we don't know, we found it's very easy for our children to get access to the internet. And that has led to visiting sites that I'd rather they didn't visit, seeing things that we certainly wouldn't want them to see, and our computers at home are like net nannied to the hilt, you know. But that wasn't the case in these hotels, but also it enabled them to make contact with their birth family online. You know, one child chose to do that, and that impacted the other children, and it was something that was a lot harder for us to work with, given that we were thousands of miles away from, you know, the usual process of having the social workers support us with that kind of role. So yeah, internet is a real issue. The whole issue of getting out in the morning, you know, my children do really well with routines, and so we had to put a lot of effort into producing little folders for them that outlined what they were going to be doing each day, why they were going to be doing it, what fun things we had to look forward to, and that constant need with them for reassurance, that kind of what's next, what's next, what's next, which you get with very young children, but our kids are teenagers, but still operating at that age, and so that's quite exhausting. You know, there isn't any time for us to be lying around on sun lounges on a holiday with our kids, because they need to know, they need us to be engaged with them at all times, even more so than they do when we're at home. And then of course there is that final issue, and I think so many foster adoptive parents are going to really identify with this. We took our boys for a week in Bali, which is somewhere I'd always really wanted to visit, and it's somewhere that they had been learning about in school through different topics around kind of Buddhism and worship and different kind of cultures. And so we were really keen to do this trip this week with them. It should have been great. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was a very, very difficult holiday. Essentially because one of our children decided that he didn't deserve it. He decided that we were being too generous, that his behaviour in the weeks before hadn't earned him this holiday. You know, even though that's not language that we use with him, it's still, you know, something that's very much kind of there for him, is that if you behave badly, you get treated badly. Huge amounts of shame, and that shame played out on that holiday. If his behaviour had been difficult before, it was like 10 times harder on that trip. And of the 7 days that we were out there was only actually 2 days that we managed to leave the house, which you can imagine was very frustrating for us and for his brothers as well. I know I'm not alone in that. I know so many of you have plans for these wonderful days out as family, wonderful holidays, only for your children to decide that this isn't something they deserve to have, and then to become almost hell-bent on showing you just how terrible they are and just how badly behaved they are. And that's really hard. That's hard when we go on a trip to Stratford-on-Avon, which is only 20 minutes away from our house. It's even harder when we've flown them across the world to give them this amazing experience. So, I guess what I wanted to say is I'm all for foster and adoptive parents having holidays without their children. I think it's essential, actually. I think it's essential that you take them away as well, and that you do try and have some great family experiences where you can. But I think it's really important that you get your time, away and your chance to feel good, to feel okay in yourself, and to be able to come back rested and recharged and ready to go and ready to take on whatever the next issue is. I don't think that it is selfish. Or if it is selfish, I'm actually okay with that. Because for me, in fostering and adoption, it's not all about the kids. It's also about you. And if you are parenting as a couple, then I think it is so important for your marriage that you have, or your relationship, that you have time together as a couple away from the children. It's so easy for our children to overtake our other relationships. And if you are fostering or adopting as a single person, then, I have the utmost respect for you, because, I find it really hard, and I've got another person living in the house doing it with me. If you are on your own, then I think it is so important that you have that time away, whether that's going off on your own and having that space that you need, or whether it's catching up with friends or whatever it is. That time for yourself is really important, and I don't think we need to feel guilty about it. I think it's okay. And so that was kind of my message for today. For those of you who think that going on holiday with traumatised children is a break, you're wrong. It's not. And so I'm already planning our next holiday. We will go away. We go away once a year. We have a friend who comes and looks after our boys. Our boys now really love their time with Auntie Jan, and all the fun that they have. So it's something they really look forward to. And I think it's made us better parents in the long run. It's certainly made our relationship stronger. And knowing that I've got that holiday to look forward to in the distance really helps me on a daily basis. So leave this video, go and check out Skyscanner or whatever you want to do, and plan your next trip, and start to look at who can be looking after your children so that you can go away and look after yourself. Okay, thanks guys, bye.